Imagine if the Bible, not just Genesis, not just Eden, but the entire arc of Scripture, hinged on Adam and Eve's first human response to being confronted with themselves. In this thought experiment, we explore a radical possibility. What if the Bible's origin story of human consciousness began with self-awareness instead of self-protection? Because the Garden of Eden isn't just a place. It's the first case study in human behavior. The Bible begins with a psychological fracture, not a moral one. And that fracture becomes the template for the entire human story. The moment Adam and Eve hide, something profoundly human is born. The instinct to protect the ego at all costs, instead of trusting that our consciousness of truth will guide and protect us through life's rough terrain. Their self-protection of ego is the origin of denial, projection, blame, self-deception, and shame avoidance. This fracture between an ego consciousness and a consciousness aligned with truth becomes the foundation for everything that follows. The entire biblical narrative, sacrifice, law, prophets, exile, and redemption, is built on the assumption that humanity is fundamentally out of alignment. But what if that fracture never happened? Now imagine the same moment, but with one psychological shift. God asks, "Did you eat from the tree?" And instead of activating defense mechanisms, Adam and Eve activate self-awareness. They step forward. They tell the truth. They tolerate the discomfort of being seen. This is not moral perfection. It's emotional maturity. And it would have changed everything. In that moment, the story doesn't collapse. It evolves. Humanity doesn't fall. It matures. This single act of honesty would have rewritten the spiritual DNA of the world. Much of the Bible's emotional landscape is built on the idea that humans are estranged from God and from themselves. In the traditional story, shame becomes the emotional inheritance of humanity. We learn to hide when we feel exposed, cover ourselves when we feel inadequate, and blame others when we feel threatened. Entire sections of Scripture that deal with guilt, cleansing, and atonement would take on a different tone. Not how do we fix what's broken, but how do we grow from what we've learned? The Bible would shift from a narrative of repair to one of development. The sacrificial system, from Cain and Abel to Leviticus, is built on the premise that something has gone wrong with humankind and must be repaired. But if the story of the first human beings had been one of choosing truth over finger-pointing and deflection, then sacrifice wouldn't have been about appeasement. It may have evolved as a symbol of gratitude, growth, or transformation, not guilt. The entire priesthood would have developed a different purpose. Likewise, much of Scripture deals with the ego's resistance to truth. Cain refusing accountability when confronted about Abel's death, Israel's repeated self-deception, the Pharisees' obsession with status being threatened by Jesus' truth, and Pilate washing his hands of accountability knowing Jesus is innocent, to name just a few examples. Scripture is practically a catalog of ego in all its disguises, and they are all psychological echoes of Eden. If Adam and Eve had modeled honesty, the ego would have been trained to integrate discomfort, not avoid it. Humans would learn to metabolize truth instead of defending against it. The Bible's stories would be less about collapse and more about integration. If the opening story of the Bible had man and woman telling the truth, it may have opened like this. In the beginning, humanity faced itself. Not, in the beginning, humanity fell. The message wouldn't have become, we are broken, but rather, we are becoming. Its main theme wouldn't have been, we need saving, but rather, it would have been, we need awareness. The Bible would become a manual for conscious growth, not a record of cosmic repair. Maybe the real message of Eden isn't about sin at all. Maybe it's about the courage to face yourself. Maybe it's about the power of truth to shape the entire arc of human history. This is the story that would have changed the Bible, and it's the story we're still writing. Thanks for watching.